The case of the Springfield Three, a haunting mystery that has baffled investigators for decades, revolves around the sudden and unexplained disappearance of three women: 47-year-old Cheryl Levitt, her 19-year-old daughter Susie Streeter, and Susie's friend, 18-year-old Stacy McCall. They vanished without a trace from Cheryl and Susie's home on June 7, 1992, after a series of graduation parties. The case remains one of the most perplexing missing persons stories in modern history, fueled by dead-end leads, chilling coincidences, and a community left in fear. It was a warm, sticky night in early June 1992. The streets of Springfield, Missouri, were quiet, save for the occasional hum of a car passing through the sleepy neighborhoods. On 1717 East Delmer Street, everything seemed calm. Inside, Cheryl Levitt, a single mother who had raised her daughter Susie Streeter alone, had just put the final touches on a celebratory graduation cake for Susie. A delicate script of congratulations, Susie stretched across the top in frosty pink letters, untouched in the fridge. The night had started like any other. Susie and her best friend Stacy McCall, fresh from their high school graduation, were reveling in the excitement of their newfound freedom. The girls had partied throughout the evening, hopping from one celebration to the next like fireflies drawn to every light. By the time the night wound down, they decided not to travel out of town to Branson, as they had originally planned, but to stay at Susie's house. Stacy made a final call to her mother, assuring her she would check in the next morning before they left for a day at the amusement park. The girls pulled into the driveway at 2:15 a.m., stepping into the cool night air. What they didn't know was that something or someone was watching them from the shadows. In the days leading up to the disappearance, Cheryl had complained about strange things happening around the house. A bent window blind, odd noises in the middle of the night, and more disturbingly, the prank calls. At first, she brushed it off as nothing more than teenage boys playing tricks, but Susie had confided in her mother that these calls were different. The voice on the other end was hushed, raspy, almost whispering. Each time, it felt as though the caller knew more than they should what Susie was wearing, where she had been that day. That night, Susie had brushed off the strange feeling that had gnawed at her gut since leaving the graduation party. Maybe it was just the pizza, she thought. Maybe it was just the exhaustion of a long day, the endless smiles, and the barrage of photographs. She pushed it all aside as she showed Stacy her new waterbed, a graduation gift from her mother. They giggled and collapsed into bed, unaware of the eyes peering through the cracks of the curtains from outside. A shadow moved beneath the window, slinking silently as it circled the house. The dogs, Cinnamon and Bubba, were unusually quiet. The night settled into an eerie stillness. By morning, all three women, Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy, would be gone. Janelle Kirby, a friend of the girls, was the first to suspect something was wrong. She had planned to meet them early that morning for their trip to the amusement park, but calls to Susie's home went unanswered. Growing concerned, Janelle and her boyfriend Mike decided to stop by the house. The scene they found was unsettling. Susie's car was in the driveway, as was Cheryl's. The front door, curiously, was slightly ajar. Inside, everything seemed in place, almost too in place. The cake sat untouched in the fridge. The cigarettes Cheryl always kept close were left behind, and the bedsheets looked as though they had been turned down. But something was off. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to return. Janelle wandered into the backyard, hoping the girls might be sunbathing, but there was no sign of them. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as she felt the oppressive weight of an unseen presence, a lurking malevolence in the air. As they walked back inside, Mike noted something strange, a faint but persistent ticking sound. They traced the noise to a clock on the wall, its mechanical ticking suddenly louder than it had any right to be. The house was otherwise dead silent. Janelle's unease grew into an annoying sense of dread. Something was very, very wrong. What happened next turned Springfield upside down. The police arrived later that evening after Janice McCall, Stacy's mother, filed a missing persons report. As investigators combed through the house, a terrifying realization settled in. There was no sign of struggle. It was as if the three women had simply vanished into thin air. Rumors quickly spread through the town. Some whispered about a serial killer, others about a kidnapper who had stalked the girls for months, watching their every move. Some swore they saw a strange green van parked near the house in the early hours of June 7th. One of the more chilling theories involved the prank calls. What if they weren't prank calls at all? What if someone had been watching the house for weeks, planning this carefully? Cheryl had dismissed the calls, but now, in hindsight, they seemed like a prelude to something far more sinister. As the days turned into weeks, search efforts intensified. Investigators dredged lakes, combed through forests, and knocked on doors, but each led to another dead end. Every tip felt like another ghost fading into the background, leaving the community grasping for answers that never came. Months passed, and the case grew colder, like a creeping fog swallowing the memory of that summer night. Yet, one theory lingered, festering in the dark corners of people's minds: the idea of the Watcher, a man who had been seen wandering the streets of Springfield, described as disheveled, with long brown hair and eyes that never seemed to focus on anything, yet saw everything. Some called him a drifter, others thought he was a figment of imagination, born from fear. But there was something about the way he appeared and disappeared, as if he knew more than anyone else. Rumors began to circulate that this man had been seen near other unsolved disappearances in the area, always lurking just out of sight. In the years following the disappearance of the Springfield Three, stories of similar vanishing acts began to emerge, and each bore a chilling resemblance to that of Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy. It was as if the shadow that had swallowed them whole had continued its hunt, moving from town to town, looking for its next victim. Despite years of investigation, the case remains unsolved. To this day, the house on East Delmer Street stands as a quiet monument to the mystery, its walls holding the secrets of that night. Some say if you listen closely at night, you can still hear the faint ticking of the clock inside, counting the minutes since they disappeared. In a town that has tried to move on, the memory of the Springfield Three lingers, like a ghost that refuses to rest. Every so often, new tips surface: strange sightings, odd connections, but none ever lead to answers, only more questions. What truly happened to Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy remains a puzzle, locked in the shadows. Maybe someday the truth will come to light. Or maybe the Watcher is still out there, waiting for the next night when the world isn't paying attention.